Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Deathnote Part 1, Episode 17, Execution. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief reminder of what happened within the episode. So we open the episode with Rem standing behind the chair of a shadowy figure who is writing down the names of various criminals, and she lets him know that as long as she kills these criminals, he can kill anybody else he wants with the notebook as well. Before we return to the headquarters, where we learn that it has now been 50 days since Light basically allowed himself to be put into prison, and Elle still hasn't informed him that the killings have resumed. And in a sort of solidarity protest, Soichiro, despite having the information that Kira has started killing again, has decided to remain in prison until Light is free. Basically, he will go out when his sun goes out. And so we then have two of the other detectives starting to question Elle about how it's starting to get cruel at this point, how Kira has started killing again, blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't be keeping them in the prison, blah, blah, blah. And Elle ultimately decides to agree with them, and he makes a proposal to Soichiro asking him to come to headquarters so that he can explain a plan to him. We then have Soichiro arriving, and we don't get to hear the plan, but while we see Elle's mouth moving, we see Soichiro becoming more and more and more shocked. And then we move on to where Soichiro is now done up nicely, no longer his bedraggled appearance that he had in prison, and he's driving a car with Misa in it. They then arrive where Aizawa is waiting with Light, who's in handcuffs. Light then gets into the car as well, and Soichiro drives him and Misa to a seemingly deserted area where the plan goes into place. And essentially, as they're driving there, Soichiro tells him that it's been decided, you're Kira, you two are about to be executed, we're going to do it secretly, but before Elle executes you, I, as your father, I'm going to take responsibility, and I'm going to shoot you, then myself, and then shortly behind us, the cops should catch up, and Misa will then be taken to the secondary location to be killed. And he then parks, pulls out the gun, and shoots a blank at Light. Once he's done that, he's filled with relief, visibly, and he and Elle have a conversation through the speakers in the car, basically revealing that that was the plan all along, that Misa, being in love with Light, if his life was in danger, would have killed Soichiro to save Light's life, and since she didn't do that, that should prove that she's at least no longer the second Kira, and in Light's case, if he was Kira, he would have absolutely no problem killing his dad if it meant saving his own life. And so the fact that Soichiro was alive proves that, at least for now, they are not as highly suspected as they once were. So once that happens, they're taken back to headquarters. Misa basically goes around and talks about how much she loves Light. Light assures everybody that it's completely one-sided on her part. And then Misa opens her big mouth. They ask her, well, you're in love with Light, but how would you feel if he was Kira? And she, of course, goes on about how much she would love him even more if he was Kira, and she would help him out at doing anything he asked, blah, 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 just like spewing everything out and not helping anybody. And basically, she annoys Aizawa to the point where she actually gets kicked out of the room. And meanwhile, Elle handcuffs himself to Light, to basically keep 24-hour surveillance on him while they work on the case together to catch Kira. And we find out that there is also a headquarters that has been being built over the last few months of the case, and that it is a few days away from completion. And once it is completed, that will be their new headquarters. And it's a 23-story above ground building with 2 stories below ground and a hidden helicopter pad, and obviously very bougie. And then we end off once again with Rem basically closing the episode like a sandwich. She opened it, now she's closing it, where we see a meeting of 8 business people with Yotsuba Industries who are determining who they're going to kill of their company's competition, and realizing that one of the 8 of them is Kira. But even amongst themselves, they don't know who it is, but they have all benefited, and so they are all willing to take part in deciding who Kira should kill, who isn't a criminal, but their competition. And now that we've been reminded about what happens within this episode, it's now time to rank the episode. As always, we rank on 2 ranking lists, a mostly objective ranking list, and then the personal ranking list. So, as always, we start with our mostly objective rank values, and once again, we don't have any negatives to discuss, so it will just be the positive rank values, and I've highlighted those I felt applied. So first, of course, with 2 points, we have our single arc main character development, which is, of course, the fact that we now know that Rem's task was to deliver the notebook to a new person to take up the mantle of Kira, and we see that she has chosen a businessman whom she has ordered to kill the criminals that are reported, and in exchange for doing that, he's then allowed to write any other names that he wants to. We then move on to our multi-arc supporting character development, which is, of course, that Misa has now been released from prison. We learn that it is 100% definite that she, at least at one point, was the second Kira due to the physical evidence that they had found on the videos. But as it seems she is no longer Kira and they can't find any other indicators, she for now is being allowed to return to her regular life, but she is going to be accompanied and surveilled by the police. And when she starts to protest this, they tell her to think of it like if she's innocent, that she now has police protection. And she likes the idea that she's going to have bodyguards, and so goes along with it. We then, worth an additional 3 points, have our impactful / memorable moment line, etc. And in this episode, there are 2, and I'm scoring them separately at 3 points each in this case, because they are both standalone so impactful. So first, of course, we have our execution trick, which is very memorable and also kind of crappy, but understandable why they did it, because obviously, as I mentioned in the summary, if they were Kira, it would have shown it. And then the second one, of course, is Ellen Light being handcuffed together, which is very impactful and also memorable. And frankly speaking, completely fanfiction fodder. I don't think that there is a single fanfiction that I have ever read that has to do with Death Note that does not include the handcuffed together portion of the show. So it has to be very impactful for that to be the case. And then we also have our multi-arc main character development, which is that Light gets released from prison, but one has to go through his dad pretending to kill him, and then number two ends up handcuffed to L, where he will have to help with the case and be surveilled 24 hours. Which honestly, he seems to mind less than having to go on dates with Misa, which I find hilarious, and is yet another reason why it's fanfiction fodder, these particular scenes. Finally, worth an additional 4 points is the world building, which of course is the revelation of a new headquarters building where they will be settling down instead of like right now they're still going every few days to a new hotel. Now they will be permanently installed in this brand new building, which, as I mentioned, I think in the summary, is going to be very bougie and fancy and so on and so forth. We also learn about Yotsuba Industries, which is a business that exists within this world. That one's more of an honorable mention, though. Either way, that brings us to a total of 19 points for this episode. There are no negatives, as I mentioned before, and so, as the maximum score is 10, it is a 10 out of 10 episode. So for our part 1 ranking so far on our mostly objective list, we have in first place, before I go into it, anytime that we have more than one episode on our mostly objective list that is ranked the same as another episode, they are put on the list in episode airing order, which is why execution is so far down. But to start the list, we have Rebirth, Confrontation, Doubt, Wager, Decision. This episode is 6th, Execution. Then Encounter, Confessions, Tactics, Friend, Pursuit, Glare, Unraveling, Love, Dealings, Assault, and in 17th, currently last place, Overcast. So next we come to my personal ranking, and I knew it was going to be a 9 because it's a very strong episode, but it couldn't be a 10 despite the iconic moments and everything because, oh my god, is Misa annoying in this episode. Oh, I couldn't get over it. I didn't want to give it less, like I didn't want it to take away more than just 1 point, but oh my gosh, she was so annoying. In the car, she was whining and crying and screaming and just very annoying. Then, of course, there's her obsession with Light that's continuing, and how she's like, I fell in love with him at first sight. I love him so much. I would love him even more if he was Kira. In fact, if he was Kira, it would be the best thing ever. I would do everything and anything to help him, basically giving away everything. Essentially more of a hindrance. And even one of the detectives, I can't remember which one now, but one of them was even while she was saying this, being like, rather than helping him, I think you'd be a hindrance. And I'm like, yes, we knew this from the start. And then, of course, like her main concern isn't the fact that she is guaranteed left evidence that she is the second Kira. It's how am I going to go on dates with Light when he's handcuffed to L? And you're so horrible for saying it's one-sided when he said that from the beginning and been very front about it day one. So, like I said, she's very annoying. That's why I don't like the character. But we established that when her introduction was in, but obviously Aizawa agreed with me, kicked her out. She wasn't taking things seriously, and we thanked him for it. But honestly, when Soichiro talks about L while they're driving and the decision that he's made, going with his gut, so on and so forth, I love how Light, even in his like panic state, is like, that doesn't sound like L. Other crimes that he's, other cases that he's solved, he's always gone on hard evidence. There's no way, blah, blah, blah. This is so suspicious. I don't understand this. He wouldn't do this. I just love that he knows him so well. And then, of course, we have the fact that as soon as Elle is like Misa's been kicked out, Elle's handcuffed to Light, and he basically asks Light, because Misa is so in love with him, even though it's one-sided, to can he pretend to like her? Can he pretend it isn't one-sided? And Light, now back to his original personality, is like, no way, I could never play with a woman's feelings like that. That's that's against my code, my moral code. I could never. I won't do that. And Elle like immediately clocks, this guy's personality is completely changed. This is not the Light I know. He even sort of pouts about the fact that he can't convince Light to go ahead and pretend for me. So obviously, as rewatchers, we know that he does do so. But at least in this episode, he's trying to take the high ground. But I find it funny how they know each other so well. And I've mentioned fan fiction because personally, I do read fan fiction, and this is my personal list and ranking. So I do feel like that comes into play just because I've read a lot of it. And I never noticed this before in previous rewatches. I thought it was a purely fan fiction thing. But I noticed in the episode when Light and Elle end up handcuffed together, Misa herself kind of accuses Elle of perversion because he wanted to be handcuffed to Light. And I thought that was hilarious because he does it all the time. Like I said, fan fiction, this is a very big part of fan fiction where this scene pretty much is there in every single one that I've ever read, pretty much, that is within universe. Obviously, if it's an out of universe version of the fan fiction or whatever, they're like setting it somewhere else, it doesn't. But anyone that's set in universe always has the scene. And they never know, like, it's never picked up on by the people who do the fan, like, who write the fan fiction. They never note that line from Misa where she's accusing Elle of this, even though they use that scene in like every single one. Shocking. But overall, major iconic moments, two of them, personal amusement, very high, annoyed by Misa. I ultimately decided that it was going to be a 9 out of 10, and then where it fell within the 9s was based on I liked this episode better and I didn't like this one as much, and that's how it fell into its placing. Which brings us to its placing. So our personal ranking for part 1 so far, we have in first place Rebirth, Encounter, Glare. This one, Execution, fell into 4th place because I like Glare a little bit better, but I don't like Confessions quite as much, which is the 5th place. Then we have Doubt, Pursuit, Decision, Confrontation, Tactics, Dealings, Friend, Love, Overcast, Wager, Unraveling, and finally, in 17th place, we have Assault. Bringing us to the final segment of the video, which is our series ranking so far. And on our mostly objective ranking, adding 10, we are at 130 out of 260. And on the personal ranking, adding 9, we are now at 103 out of 260. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Deathnote Part 1, Episode 17, Execution. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.